Teachers, how have you secretly rewarded or punished a student? Story 1. I teach a high school elective course, aka not as important as English or math, and I had a class that was 23 boys and 2 girls. If you're a teacher, you know this is terrible, a terrible setup. Teenage boys are definitely pack animals and are constantly in a struggle to establish their hierarchy, especially if females are limited. Anyways, these guys were a constant ball of energy and were always doing stupid guy stuff. They went through a phase where they cup-checked each other. This went on for weeks. Little Johnny in the back would walk up to sharpen his pencil. Bam! Cup check. Sack tap. So one day in class, one student, I'll call him Travis, asked to go to the restroom. I gave him the pass and sent him on his way. The rest of the class was quietly working when another boy in the back yelled out, "Oh my God! Travis just texted me a picture of his balls." Now, I know how these guys have acted all semester, and I also know the zero-tolerance mess that school systems deal with. I knew this could end up very, very badly if it was dealt with by the administration. Immediately got the kid to delete the text, calm the riotous laughter going on, and somehow managed to get them all back on task. But Travis wasn't back yet, and I sure as heck wasn't going to let him smugly get away with this. So I called his mom and had her on hold. Told her that Travis had done something that I did not approve of, but I felt it best if he would explain his actions to her instead of me. On a side note, I teach animal anatomy, so terms like testicle, scrotum, etc. are common vocabulary. So in walks Travis with this poop-eating grin on his face. He thinks he has succeeded, until I casually look up from my desk and let him know his mom is on the phone. There, in front of the entire class, he had to explain that he had just taken a picture of his testicles and sent it via text to his buddy in class. You could literally hear Mom screaming through the phone. Once he finished, I spoke with her and told her that I felt the situation would be best handled by her and thanked her for her time. That day, I won. Story 2. The year was a rough one right from the beginning. I was teaching 4th grade, and within the first week, I had 3 or 4 major incidents. Seeing this group needed bonding, I found a bicycle repairman who had a bunch of bikes in front of his lawn. I arranged for a bicycle field trip along an old railroad grade that had been paved and paid $3 each to rent the bikes for the day. The old railroad track had a slight upgrade in it, so the kids would have to keep pedaling without getting too far in the distance. So they didn't get too far ahead. I positioned an adult in front with me in the back. We were dropped off at the beginning of the trail when the bus driver said, "I'm not going to be sticking around waiting for you," and drove off. Oh well, I had a cell phone. Anyway, the kids were anxious to take off, so I sent the parents, only one volunteered, off. Everybody took off except for one rather large girl who stood there looking rather confused. This girl was the source of a lot of the issues in this class, a princess of the first order and famous for her tantrums. I asked what was wrong. She answered, "I don't know how to ride a bike." She wasn't snotty about it, but just factual. With the class riding off in the distance, I told her how to pedal while I grabbed the center of her handlebars. We both pedaled that 8 miles with me cajoling her, motivating her all 8 miles. It was at the last mile when she finally got the balance part and finished beside me. I dang near tore my left arm off that day, and every time after that, when she started in on her princess act, I'd hold my left shoulder as if it pained me something fierce. Finally, in March or April, she would look at me, saying, "Mr. R, your shoulder can't be sore anymore." It was something we kept between us all year. Story 3. The kid who sits behind me in high school honors physics class is named Nico. Nice kid, funny, sarcastic, likes to joke and mess with the teachers, but knows when to shut the frick up. Teacher is named Mr. Thompson. Old guy, late 60s or early 70s, and was teaching at this same high school when my dad was a freshman here way back in 1976. We've only been in school 9 weeks, and I could fill a thread with stories from this class. Mr. T had already entered my top 3 favorite teachers list after the first class. His philosophy is simple. You respect me, I respect you. We took a test over vectors last week, which required the use of graphing calculators. 10 minutes left in the class, and Nico is the last one to finish. Turns in the test, goes back to seat, punches a few things in his calculator, then goes, son of a... He sighed loudly, then said, ridden with despair, Mr. T. Already slightly amused, Thompson asked what the problem was. Nico had just realized that he had taken his entire test with his calculator set on the wrong mode. Therefore, all of his answers, it was safe to assume, were wrong. Mr. T took a minute to calm him down, then told Nico that he would grade the tests over the weekend and see what he could do. Get the tests back on Monday, and come to find out that Mr. T had gone through every problem on Nico's test, following his work on a separate calculator with it set on the same mode as Nico's was during the test, and graded it based on Nico's understanding of how to solve the problems. He still ended up getting a C, but it still shows the level of commitment and respect he has for his students. Story 4. I have a little activity called secret compliments that I often do when I'm starting up or taking over a new class. It's a good way to get to know the students, and also just to increase the positivity of the room. Well, one time I got a bad vibe from a class right away, and I could kind of tell that all the other students disliked this one kid. Well, I did the secret compliments game anyway, where all the kids write down nice things about another randomly chosen student, and then I read them at the front of the class. Sure enough, the kid who had to write a compliment for the class pariah wrote a nasty message instead of a compliment. I changed it on the spot to a nice compliment without anyone knowing, except the kid who wrote it, of course, and I made eye contact with him the whole time I was reading. I also purposefully saved his own compliment for last to make him sweat a little and wonder if anyone had written anything nice for him, or if I was going to read it. At the end of the class, I took him aside and privately told him that he had a new homework assignment, to write 10 nice things about the class pariah and give them to him personally, and that for every other kid he could get to do the same thing, I would give him both and the other kid a candy bar, but not to tell anyone about the candy bars or that I told him to do it. I'm a strong believer in the fake it till you make it school of thought. The next day, the class pariah had like 100 nice notes, which I of course read and checked over first, and I gave a sack full of candy bars, Coffee Crisp, I love Coffee Crisp, to the other guy to distribute. He got to see how much nicer it felt to be nice, and became somewhat of a class leader. Maybe he was before I came in, but I like to think I had some positive effect on him. Story 5. I was the student, and the secret kindness was from my guidance counselor, not a teacher. I skipped class a good bit in my senior year, but I was a huge goody two-shoes. It wasn't a rebellious thing, just trying to handle some pretty heavy life circumstances at the time. I never went far, and most of it was just trying to stay afloat in schoolwork. I got caught skipping class one of those times. I was hiding in the school auditorium, studying for my math exam later that day, while my friend worked in the tech booth. This was the second time I'd been caught skipping that week, and since I was a girl and my friend was a dude, the teachers who caught us were sure we were up to something a little more devious than studying. Up to something. They made it very clear that I was in huge trouble, and that my guidance counselor, who knew me and what was going on in my life quite well, would be called. When she came in, she looked terrifying and told me I would have to come to her office because this was such a big offense, and told the other teachers that I'd be punished with the fullest extent. I was appropriately shaking in my little goody two-shoe boots, but when we got to her office, she dropped what was apparently just an angry act, and quietly told me that I could stay in her office and finish studying for that math exam for the rest of the period, and essentially just kept watch for me the whole time. That moment really stuck with me, and the rest of her kindness throughout all of high school absolutely got me through a few of the crappiest years of my life. Kids who misbehave aren't always mess-ups. Man, great teachers and mentors can keep sight of that and really make a difference. Story 6. Not a teacher, but a student. I switched majors in college as a junior from business to geography. I had taken all the general ed classes, and I was in a hurry to learn something that would have something to do with some kind of a career. I took all geography classes in one semester, including intro mapping classes and senior-level GIS courses. My advisor did bureaucratic magic to get me past prerequisites. I had one professor who taught 2 of my top-level classes. I came in with no previous experience in the software we were using or any of the general knowledge required for the class. I had my nose to the grindstone and put in more effort than I ever had in college. In 3 weeks, my professor had me tutoring other students who weren't doing well in the class. The very first day of class, I wrote down the day and time for the final exam. Fast forward to the end of the semester, I'm sitting at an 88% with complete confidence in my ability to get an A. I show up for the final, and it turns out I wrote down the wrong time for the final, showing up for it at the end time, not the start. I go to the professor's office to plead my case, hoping he'll let me take the final. He tells me I won't learn anything from this if he lets me take it, but he knows I put in effort into the class, and my final grade will reflect that. Grades came in, and I got a 90% in the class. Story 7. If a student can dance on an essay where they obviously have no idea what they're talking about, I'll give them some credit for the attempt. For example, I ask you to discuss 3 major causes of the French Revolution, causes we covered in class. You don't know them, but in the essay you try to extrapolate some possible causes using information you do know, or attempt to morph the question into a topic you're prepared to discuss. I call that dancing, because a good performance can be moving, and a poor performance is laughable. I've gone as high as 75% credit for a good dance. In my honest opinion, it demonstrates a better mastery of the material than actually parroting back what I've been talking about for the last 4 weeks. On the other hand, if you pull any of that crap that shows up on 9gag, like give this drawing of some stupid meme an A, or whatever, I will burn your butt for the rest of the semester. You so much as omit a semicolon, and it's half credit at best. Story 8. I used to always show up late for my 10th grade science class. One day we had a little chapter review quiz at the start of class, and naturally, I'm a minute or 2 late. So I walk over to my desk, and the teacher hands me my quiz. It's all really advanced questions, consisting of polysyllabic biology jargon that I've never seen. Question after question is material that I'm confident we have never ever covered in the class. After about 2 minutes, I look up to see how everyone else is doing on their quiz. Everybody was watching me, and when I looked up, they all started laughing. The teacher had printed up a single fake quiz with super complicated biology questions just to mess with whatever kid ended up showing up last to the quiz. Ms. Cohen, you were a fun teacher. Thumbs up. Story 9. I have a student this year who makes my life heck. She is blatantly disrespectful, nasty to me and classmates, and thinks I'm her personal waitress. Part of this is that every day she tries to hand me her work when I'm running around the room getting class started, but she does it in this manner that implies I'm her maid. I tell her every day to get up and put it in the turn-in box like everyone else. She whines until some other classmate does it for her. Thursday, she left her extra credit, 2 points on her test, not that much, on her desk like it was my job to go get it after class. I threw it away. I'm not sure this is punishment as much as expecting her to follow directions, but I can't honestly say I would have done the same to other students. Small, petty justice, but I did it nonetheless. Story 10. I was the student in this case. At the very start of 10th grade, my mother was in a motorcycle accident where she should have died. Ended up in ICU, various hospitals for over a year. Meanwhile, I have arthritis, so I get sick easily, psoriatic, genetic. During the 3rd term, I was sick for a week, on top of already being behind from getting 2 hours a night to work on assignments because I went to visit my mom daily. I went to my European history teacher to explain it, and he immediately dismissed all my missing homework assignments for the term because he knew I was an excellent student who didn't deserve a poor grade for this. His words, not mine. I owe that man my 1 B+ from that year, and he's been a major reason that I'm so motivated to do well for the rest of my high school career, along with my mom still being around. Story 11. A local music store was going out of business, where a lot of students rented band and orchestra instruments. I had a student who has a serious lifelong disability, but she still participated in many things and is an outstanding student and person in general. She went through some scary medical things, but never complains, and is so genuinely happy. Her family is blue-collar, hard-working, but I knew her medical expenses were a constant in her family's life. The store was offering a discount, plus their normal rent-to-own discount for students who had instruments to outright purchase them before they closed for good. I contacted them, and they let me pay the remaining cost of her instrument and kept my identity a secret. Story 12. Had a kid who was working a job late into the night in order to help his family while trying to finish his senior year in high school. His dad had been laid off and his mother was disabled, so they were barely making it. He told me that he worked late into the night and he had to miss days of school too. He did the best he could in my class, but just couldn't pass after missing so much class. He was a senior and a good kid who needed my English class to pass. Figuring that the kid's life was already hard enough and that his family was struggling enough, I secretly added some points to assignments he hadn't done so that his final grade went from a 50% to a 61%, just enough to pass and graduate. I don't like giving away grades, and I never told him. He just thought he had passed. Story 13. I used to play poker and chemistry with my friends. We always seemed to lose decks of cards, so one of us bought a 4-pack. 5 minutes into our game, our chemistry teacher noticed and confiscated the deck. But little did he know, we had 3 more. Until a minute later when he confiscated the second. By the end of the lesson, he'd taken all 4 decks. We collected them at the end and went on our way. Cut to the next chemistry lesson, and we're playing poker again. After 10 to 15 hands, we realized that no aces have come up. We looked through the deck and only counted 48 cards. Bit of a pain, but we had 4, so we could use the aces from another deck. Except none of those had them too. We looked up at our teacher, and he was waving 16 aces at us. Story 14. I'm not a teacher, but this happened to me. Long story short, my jack-butt father was trying to have me taken away from my mother. He contacted my guidance counselor, and I'm still not sure what their arrangement was. All I know is that she started pulling me out of class and buying me candy and comic books, and she kept asking me weird questions about my home life. Before too long, she called me to her office and had a stack of 12 comics on her desk, every Marvel and DC book that came out that week. She told me they were mine. But first I had to talk to a social worker and tell her a few small lies about my home life that would add up to me getting forced to live with my father. I told the social worker what was going on, and she called my mom, gave me the comics, and sent me home for the day. Never saw the guidance counselor again. Wow, that's fricked up. Story 15. When I was in 9th grade, I had a principal named Dr. Ridgway. My life was just a big ball of doo-doo, to be honest. I was bullied, living in an escort motel, it was trashy, that we couldn't afford, and I self-harmed. Dr. Ridgway went above and beyond for me. She obviously had to get the bullies, and she did. Anytime I felt the urge to self-harm in school, I was in her office. She would let me sit outside the building and listen to music so I could calm down, and if it got too bad, I was allowed to call Mom and go home. No questions asked. The most important thing she did, she asked the people who donated a lot of money to the school to help pay for us to live in a motel for another week. She did that 3 times till we got on our feet to live in an apartment. I've never had a teacher or school worker mean so much to me. I need to go visit her soon. Story 16. It's only a little thing, but when I'm marking assignments, if I can see that a kid has really tried, I'll write them a little note, like, "Great effort, Michael. I can really see your algebra skills developing. You've come a long way since I started teaching you, and I know you're going to get a great grade at the end of the year if you keep working this hard." I think there's something really nice about a written note. I do this especially for the quiet kids, who might not want me to draw attention to them in class, but it's my way of saying, I do see you working hard, even though you think you're invisible. Story 17. In my high school, our report cards only listed the letter value and not any pluses or minuses. One teacher would announce any plus or minus in class after the reports came out. She didn't announce your letter grade, just the plus minus. One term, she gave me a minus. I had a D. I was struggling in the class and had even gotten some tutoring, so she knew I was trying and had given me a little boost by not giving me a failing grade, but made it clear I had to push even harder. I managed to improve and pass the class with a B. An F may have made me give up on the class. Story 18. I taught high school. This one kid was always in trouble, always on disciplinary probation. Not an ounce of sense. During the last period of the day, the kid walked in with a soda can, which was strange because lunch was already over a few hours ago. He was obviously dipping. I knew it, and he knew I knew. I picked up the can and acted like I was accidentally about to take a drink. He turned pale. Then I apologized and said, "Sorry, all yours. Down the hatch," and waited for him to guzzle it. He guzzled it, then asked if he could go to the restroom to retch. Better than being suspended for possessing tobacco. Story 19. Back in 4th grade, I was yelling swear words in class. Little idiot me thought swearing was cool and all that, and got the teacher really mad. He then dragged me to the office and began lecturing me, half peed off. A few moments later, another teacher, who liked me, asked him if she could take over and handle the problem for him, and so I went with her afterwards. After a simple, "Don't do this again, okay?" she let me play RuneScape on her computer for the rest of the period. I also helped her create an account. Story 20. While making seating charts, thinking, it would be quite a shame if I sat my least favorite kid under the Arctic AC blast. Yes, sirree, quite a shame. Anyone who comes in late to a full lecture theater at my university gets to sit under the horrible air conditioning. It's 365 days a year, regardless of if temperatures are less than freezing outside. Story 21. I assigned a very high point value project to my high school chem class. A bright, popular student turned in a hellfire effort. I knew she knew that she was half-butted, and I knew she had a conscience, so I handed her my gradebook and told her to fill in her own grade. I said, whatever you write will be your grade, no questions asked. It was fun watching her squirm for 10 minutes, begging me to make the choice for her. Story 22. I asked my professor if I could turn in a report by the end of the day, instead of during class time, since I wasn't finished. He said it was okay, no problem. He ended up grading harsher than other students, and I'm convinced it's because I turned it in late. My feeling while grading is generally, hey, you got extra time, it better be extra good. Story 23. I needed one of those scientific calculators for a class exam, but my family couldn't afford one. My teacher took me to his office and handed me a brand new one in a box. He said, I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell anyone in class about this. I nearly cried. I was only about 13. I think I gave it back to him like 5 years later, as I wouldn't be using it again, and told him to pass it on to the next kid. Tom, Mr. C. Story 24. In 3rd grade, my teacher would call me up to her desk and give me a lifesaver whenever I was being too rowdy or antsy in class. I was a hyper kid, and sometimes energy got the best of me. It was our understanding that when she did that, I needed to chill a bit. So it wasn't secret to me per se, but the rest of the class was unaware of it. Story 25. I've added points to students who were on the cusp of failing or would get letter grade improvements. If they were behaviorally or socially good people, I feel it's worth rewarding people who try hard or have good character, as much as it is worth rewarding content. Story 26. I'm usually cool with a student charging their phone in my room, but they have to ask first. If they don't, I try to guess their password till their phone is locked for 12 hours. Or better yet, until they have to sign into iTunes again. I'm considering auctioning the seats next to outlets. There's money in that. Story 27. Not a teacher, but an occupational therapist that works in an elementary school, had a guess how many Legos contest at the end of the year. This kiddo just has a sad life, and always tells me how his siblings were happier before he was born. This is a sweet kid. Not a mean bone in his body. Guess who won the Legos? Story 28. I never fudge grades one way or another, but when I know a student has really put in the effort and is genuinely trying, I'm more lenient with due dates, within reason. I'd rather they learn the lesson and be able to apply it later than meet a deadline. Story 29. I took the kid's phone and texted his mom saying, I love you, and I think I'm old enough for more responsibility. Can I start mowing the lawn or washing the dishes or something to help you out? The kid was 12 and hates me to this day. Story 30. When I'm doing final grades, if a good student is really close to a higher grade, I round it up. If they've misbehaved, it stays where it's at. Story 31. If someone fell asleep in my high school physics class, the teacher would not wake him up, turn the lights off, and leave. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.